Greetings and salutations. You are watching Pop Goes VR, episode 11. My name is Danthol. I'm here with my co-host, Ryan. How's it going, Ryan?
I am doing wonderful, Danthol. We'll just say wonderful. You know, the whole world around us is falling apart, but all things considered, I'm doing not half bad. How about yourself?
Yeah. We're the half of the world that's falling apart. You said all around us. Is meaning around, meaning us, mostly, surrounding you. In America here, where the COVID-19 crisis is ongoing. My kids are doing remote school, which is interesting. They just go on and they do their homework, and I see them around their house with their school laptops, and maybe they're on the couch, maybe they're in the room, maybe they're at the kitchen table, but they're hanging out doing their schoolwork. It is interesting times to be alive. Pop Goes VR is a show about VR in VR. VR180. So if you're watching this on your headset, whether it be like a Rift or a Go or any of the other headsets that are out there.
They all work. They all work. We've tested it. They all work.
They all work. PlayStation VR. Yeah, go watch this in there. You can look around and you can see interesting things that my room is very messy and I didn't clean it up. This is like my little office area. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about the movie Tron Uprising.
Oh, you screwed that up.
Tell us about Tron Uprising.
Tron Legacy.
Oh, did I? Tron Legacy. See, I was reading the notes and everything because you're like, if you like this, watch Tron Legacy. Tron Legacy. Yes. How did I get the title of that wrong? You prepare for the shows and in any script anyways. Ha! It's funny. Tell us about the movie.
All right. Tron Legacy was released all the way back in 2010, which actually surprises me. I've watched this thing regularly. I own the Blu-ray. You can see here. I'm not sure how this is going to work in VR. Let's give that a go. Woo! But yeah, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm not saying it's like one of the best movies of all time, but it's a movie I can watch over and over and over again and pretty much never get sick of it. So like I said, it released December 17th, 2010. Directed by... Oh, I lost my notes. Directed by Joseph Kosinski. Funny fact, he's a first-time director, and he was given this movie a $170 million budget. It's the biggest budget ever given to a first-time director. Jeff Bridges returns. He starred in the original Tron, as well as Bruce Boxleitner, who plays Tron himself. And then we get new additions. Garrett Hedlund is Sam Flynn, his son, and Olivia Wilde as a program they meet in Tron, which is a virtual, well, I guess not a virtual world, but it's a computer space made real. So basically you get sucked into the computer world, but it still has its own like physics and it's its own VR world. It's a virtual world that's still in reality, so it still applies.
It's the grid.
It's the grid. That's what I based my whole channel around.
Yeah. No, the grid is an interesting place. In the original Tron movie, the 80s movie, they established that it is kind of like a quantum teleportation kind of thing that's going on, but instead of doing that, it transmits him inside of the grid, which is a world that is like a video game world. And the video game, the characters in there have lives when they're not playing the video games. They're not being controlled by a user. So that was kind of to establish that world, or the video game world where things like that happen. And Wreck-It Ralph ripped that kind of idea off. It's the same kind of concept as Wreck-It Ralph. If you've seen that movie too and you haven't seen Tron, it's the original version of Wreck-It Ralph.
Or Reboot. If you enjoyed the Reboot TV series, this is straight up, They based it entirely off of Tron.
Yeah. So Jeff Bridges makes his return, and with this, we get to see a lot of the computer technology of young Jeff Bridges. They bring they use computer technology to make him look younger, and they use computer technology to make a version of him that's younger, and his name Clue. And you're like, wait a second, what's going on? If you don't pay attention, you lose it. But yeah, there's this guy named Clue, which is a copy of Jeff Bridges, and then you have like all of these different costumes that they put old Jeff Bridges in. I loved it. He was like, at times he was like Jesus. At times he was like Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan Kenobi. At times he was Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And at times he was the dude. So it was just funny to see how all over the place they had Jeff Bridges and all the costume changes and all the pretty clothes with the lights that are emanating, and everything pretty much looks black and white until you see the brilliant red and blue and orange colors and everything. It's very cinematic. It's graphically beautiful the way they put all of that together. The soundtrack was good, a lot of good action, but sometimes it's just like, where's this acting going? What's happening with Jeff Bridges being just weird? I don't know.
Like I said, the story. I mean, the first Tron was all about Jeff Bridges and Kevin Flynn. The plot of this one is basically Kevin Flynn disappeared ages ago after he had his son. So now we're following around his like 30-year-old son, I guess. And basically he kind of stumbled his way back into Tron, the grid. Sorry, the grid. And we then follow their exploits. He's looking for his father. Like you said, there's another program that's young Jeff Bridges. It's one of the first uses of de-aging in cinema, so it doesn't look right. Every scene that Jeff Bridges is de-aged just looks off a bit, and I think it was just a movie that kind of was ahead of its time as far as trying for those kind of effects, because, I mean, now the Marvel films are just killing the de-aging thing. I would love to see someone like face swap CG Jeff Bridges with like an old picture of Jeff Bridges and see how well that looks, because it's there, it's close, but it just doesn't quite work. But no, I love this film. You mentioned the soundtrack. The soundtrack of this film blows me away. I'm not really a big techno, if techno's even a genre anymore, I don't even know. But like that style of music, the Daft Punk thing, I've never been a Daft Punk fan ever. And this movie made me a Daft Punk fan. I absolutely, every single moment in this thing. I have the soundtrack. It's my ringtone in my phone. Like, the soundtrack just hits home. It makes everything so much more cinematic and just, it just puts you in the scene. I really said, I love just about everything this movie has to deliver. Like I said, the plot is relatively simple. I appreciate that. It doesn't get too, it's complicated in as far as the topics go, but realistically, it's a very, very simple plot. So, but I think that works to its benefit. It ties back to the original, but you don't need to see the original to really kind of get all the base points. They're all there. The original is a tougher watch. I recommend watching it before you do this, but by no means do you have to. It's a movie that stands alone. It's why it's not called Tron 2. It's called Tron Legacy. Definitely tried to make something that was that's a standalone product that benefits from its histories.
Yeah. It just, you were saying in the plot, the simplification of the plot turned into, Jesus Flynn versus Hitler Flynn, as what it really came down to. The plot of it was, in the grid, while they are inside of it, they have this new life form that they call the ISOs. And the ISOs just spontaneously were created within this, the world of the grid, or they appeared in the grid. And that's what they took them in. And Clue, the bad Flynn, the copy of, Flynn made Clue to create a perfect world. And Clue is taking this way too seriously. And a perfect world includes creating these, or destroying these creatures, the ISOs, that were an imperfect creature. He didn't want imperfect creature. So, that was really transparent in there. And they even had like, when the ISOs are coming in, they're coming down a mountain, and they're marching as a formation down a mountain to even further push the allegory of them being the Jews, essentially. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's some of those kind of things in there. They were interesting. Having the Greek gods mixed in there, or the name Zeus was one of the characters, and we were talking before that this was your least favorite scene. Tell us about your least favorite scene in the movie.
I dislike Zeus as a character. He just, like, everything in this movie is pretty serious. There's some jokey moments, but for the most part, everyone surrounding Sam is very serious. There's very serious things happening, and then he goes to this bar in the grid, and Zeus runs it. This guy all dressed in white, Martin Sheen. I can't remember his name now. It's something Sheen. And apparently he was so excited to be offered this role that his like handlers had to like make sure it didn't get out that he wanted to be in this movie so bad because he would get underpaid. Regardless, It's just the whole dance number didn't work. He's like dancing around while everyone's fighting around him. It was just goofy and weird, and it just to me didn't fit the overall theme of the movie. And I was pretty happy what happened to his character after that scene.
Mm. Yeah. So overall, we both like the movie.
I love this
You
movie.
are not a
I
fan.
love this.
You're not a fan of the original Tron, which I find interesting. The original Tron for me was a big thing, more so than Daft Punk doing the soundtrack for this one. Wendy Carlos did the soundtrack for the Tron movie. And it was an interesting time because Wendy Carlos was formerly Walter Carlos. So transitioned transgender, and Disney kind of had issues like, what are we going to do? What do we know? We wanted Walter. We don't necessarily want Wendy, but it happened anyways. So it was just like an inclusivity kind of thing early on in transgender. Wendy Carlos still alive, still doing some music, but love the influence that Wendy Carlos had on the music and the Moog synthesizers and the soundtrack for the original Tron. Loved that. Daft Punk did a good job too. I was disappointed that they didn't have more of Tron one type of music in there, integrated in there during one of the scenes. Dun 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 dun.
No,
You know,
you're wrong.
I wanted some of that.
Like I mean, I don't
Like a dum whoop 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 dun 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 dun. Yeah.
I don't dislike the first movie. It's just aged not very well, and the plot it's very
Yeah.
long. It does plot in lots
Yeah.
of points. I mean, I appreciate what it does. This is at the time 1982. It was revolutionary. I can totally appreciate where it came from. And I'm so happy it was made because I get Tron Legacy. It's just it's a tougher watch nowadays. It just hasn't aged well. I guess is kind of where I'm coming
Yeah.
from. It's like I said, I still say if you love Tron or Legacy, please watch the original to see where this thing came from. And if you love Tron Legacy,
Yeah.
while I'm at it, there's actually a Disney series. It's on Disney Plus right now. It's called Tron Uprising. It's a
Uh-huh.
prequel to this movie, and it's great. I've watched it. It takes the soundtrack of this movie and uses it there. Bruce Boxleitner comes back as Tron as well. It fits wonderfully. Elijah Wood's the main character. It's a fantastic little side piece to this universe that I totally recommend watching.
Side piece. Yeah. And then we have Tron 3, which is going to be Tron 3 Ares. The name was leaked. The studio says maybe it's just a working title, but if it's Tron Ares, Ares is the god of war. So they use Greek god names in the movie before. Every movie uses Greek gods as a basis. It's weird. Every good action movie has some weird Greek or Roman influence story-wise in it. You can't because they created all of the stories then. We're just retelling those same stories over and over again. So God of War, that makes it sound like, maybe the world of, the grid is going to try and push into the real world again. Because that's what the plot of 2 was, basically, is Clue wanted to cross through the grid, because if, even though you're living in the grid, if you transport through the quantum, laser, you can go into the real world. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're going to cross over. They're going to find a back door, and they're going to start a war.
Yeah, we'll see. They don't know. I mean, like the leaks are small. Like I said, Jared Leto just leaked that he's looking forward to Tron Ares. So I mean, it's also an actor, so maybe like I said it could be a working title. Not much is known. I know, like after this movie made its money back just barely, and worldwide gross it doubled it, but that's not really a Hollywood success. So they kind of backed off of the Tron franchise. There was rumors of a sequel. The third movie was already written or being written, and Disney kind of put the brakes on that. And then obviously, I guess just fandom and whatnot kind of got, this thing is still is relevant to this day. Where a few years ago they started bringing up that new Tron movie with Leto attached, but then it kind of just went to the ether. By all accounts, no one else is attached to this yet, so no Jeff Bridges or any of the returning characters from this one yet. Not to say that that's going to happen, but it sounds to me like they're kind of getting away from that core storyline, the whole Flynn storyline, and maybe focusing on other programs or other characters in the universe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I like that idea. What do you think about that? If they just ignored the Flynn story and just went with something totally new.
How are you going to ignore the Flynn story? Flynn is essentially a god. He's the creator. That's why you can't exclude him out of that. But I guess if they're going to make it, just talk about that being in the past and only focusing on what's going on in the future and not have Flynn be an integral part of the story. Yeah, I mean, it's a universe of its own. Like the Matrix movies are a universe of their own. The Tron universe is a universe of its own with a virtual world that sits on some dimension or some quantum state that can, or is it? It's they can do things with it.
No, I mean, like I said, their options are really endless. I just don't know, like I said, based upon just rumors and whatnot. I mean, like I said, it sounds like they're getting away from that core story. Whether they do, I don't know. I just don't know if I'm a fan. I'm also not a big Leto fan. I like Leto as a sort of an actor, I guess.
Is it Leto or Leto?
It's Leto.
I always call him Jared Leto.
Leto. As far as I
call
know.
him Leto, anyways.
But he tends to overact and stuff, and he takes stuff. So he's a method actor, and I don't know. I don't. Looking back at the plethora of his work, I see I'm not really a big fan of his. I don't hate him, but I don't really like him. So him being cast as the lead in this thing, I'm a little bit put off. I love this movie so much, I will see it regardless, but I'm just like, ooh, I don't know if that's the right choice. Like I said, he's a fantastic actor, so if he brings it, it'll be awesome. I don't know. I mean, we don't know anything. We know so little right now. I want to know more.
Yeah. Jared Leto, for me, is kind of like, imagine you're making a Dungeons and Dragons character sheet, and you have like, or slider bars for like attractiveness and acting skills. Like Jared Leto is the Joaquin Phoenix. If you turn down the acting skills to give more beauty, he's a pretty Joaquin Phoenix to me without the same acting skill. He is the Nicolas Cage to the now I'm going to forget his name. Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis and Nicolas Cage were doing movies at the same kind of time, and Bruce Willis is always better at a movie than Nicolas Cage is. If you take any Nicolas Cage movie and put Bruce Willis in there, Bruce Willis is going to do a better job than Nicolas Cage. But if you take Nicolas Cage and put him in any Bruce Willis movie, he's going to do a worse job than Bruce Willis did in that movie. That's my theory of the Bruce Willis-Nicolas Cage being that. And I think Joaquin Phoenix and Jared Leto have that same kind of push and pull, where they're the same person essentially, but just a slightly different, you know what, I'm being weird. Yeah, I am. That's when I see these actors, because I watch all these movies and everything, that's how my brain associates them. Oh, look, it's pretty Jared Leto. I call him Leto, you call him Leto. So Tron Legacy, Jeff Bridges, good stuff. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Pop Goes in VR. If we want to learn more about you, Ryan, where do we go?
I run the VR Grid YouTube channel. I have run the VR Grid website, and on social media, I'm the VR Grid. So if you're looking for me, you can't possibly miss me. Danthol, where can we find yourself?
Go to Watch in VR. It's essentially just a link to my YouTube channel where I make a lot of other VR180 videos. I have one at a Black Lives Matter rally. I go to arcades. I go to the zoo. I go to a bunch of fun places with my camera, and I talk and wave and introduce things. It's fun. If you like VR180 videos after watching this one in your headset, thank you very much for watching Pop Goes VR. Have a good one.
See you.